The older I get, the more weddings start to give way to funerals. Although people don't really have old-fashioned funerals anymore. This is a memorial or celebration of life that I'm getting dressed for. I knew when I got the call from an old friend of mine that something bad had happened. We communicate via email every now and then, but for her to call me out of the blue, I got a sinking feeling. Like the time she called me almost 10 years ago to inform me that her brother, one of my best friends, had killed himself. I was reliving that all over again. Thankfully, I was parked when I got the call. Sure enough, she said, "Did you hear about Joe?" I knew exactly who she was talking about, and no, I hadn't heard that he was in a motorcycle crash and died that morning. My parents and his parents were close, so we had grown up together and were friends as adults as well, although we didn't share many similar interests anymore. He was an outdoor enthusiast, and I'm a computer nerd who prefers to be inside. The last time I saw him was at my brother's funeral in 2016. We made promises to get together as usual, and as usual, neither one of us found the time to make the effort, even though we didn't live very far from one another. When my other pal killed himself, I was filled with regrets. I thought that maybe I could have saved his life with a simple phone call. But short of physically smashing his motorcycle, there was nothing I could do to save Joe. You can tell someone that they're being reckless, but that doesn't mean that they'll listen. I've made comments on Vegan Gains videos trying to warn him that he's being fucking stupid. But no, he's going to promote motorcycles as green transportation, when what they really are is white and red transportation. You know, the color of your bones and internal organs when you become a smear on the pavement. There's a good reason why nurses and cops call them donor cycles. Gaines just published another motorcycle video where he actually cut together some of his close calls. And these are just the ones he had recorded. Part of the reason why they keep cutting him off is because they can't fucking see him. Cars, unlike motorcycles, have blind spots. Does he not know that? He's acting like an entitled child. My dad had a motorcycle when I was very young, until a merging semi drove him off the expressway into a ditch. He sold it immediately after that and never sat on one again. But Vegan Gains, after several near-death experiences, still doesn't get it. In this video, he's lamenting that people who don't wear helmets make his insurance rates go up. He somehow thinks that a padded piece of fiberglass is going to stop his head from being separated from his neck when he goes flying through the air at 50 miles an hour. Joe was going significantly slower than that, ended up hitting his head, and he still died. An older friend of mine was a cop for many years before he changed careers, and during the first motorcycle accident that he investigated, he walked down the road to recover the guy's helmet. To his horror, the head was still in there. It's like wearing leather armor in a gunfight. It won't do a fucking thing to save you if you're going faster than 10 miles an hour. I didn't record the penciling process of this portrait, as I had less than a week to do it, and didn't want to waste any time messing around with the camera at first. If the likeness didn't turn out, I would have just abandoned it. This was my second attempt. I was drawing this as a gift for his parents. In his obituary, they wrote something that always makes me cringe a little. They said he, quote, deeply cared about animals, unquote, which I'm sad to say simply isn't true. He loved certain animals, like his rescued dog, but others he consumed with glee. But nobody cares about those animals. Of course, he wouldn't listen to my pleas to stop eating them, as no friends or family ever will. Gary Yourofsky was right when he said it's not worth your time to even bother. Joe made some other unfortunate decisions in his life other than riding motorcycles, and one of them was to forego wearing a condom, and he ended up with a kid he hardly ever saw. Just like my brother did. The kid ended up with a fucked up brain disease. Although in his defense, it was one of those situations where he had sex with a girl, and then she moved to another state, only to call him a few years later and say, "Hey, guess what? You owe me child support." So it wasn't purposeful procreation on his part, but still incredibly reckless. His brother did one worse though. He had 5 kids. I was hoping they wouldn't be dragged to this memorial, but of course they were. One of them turned out to be a dwarf who has required multiple surgeries and painful implants to help her grow, but they kept having more kids anyway. For some reason, he was one of 3 people who asked us if we will be having kids. I'm 42 and my wife is 36. Clearly, we are too old. But they ask anyways. I said no, I got snipped. And he said, oh, I did too. To which my wife said, a little late for that. Which is true, but at least he won't be having number 6. Joe's dad overheard this and made the strange remark that my wife and I would make beautiful babies. I've heard that before from others. I had said to him, come on, there are plenty of beautiful people in the world already. Los Angeles has so many of them that only the most beautiful of the beautiful get the work. But that is such a vain and ridiculous reason to bring someone into existence. My brother was very handsome with striking green eyes, but he only used his looks to manipulate people. Many beautiful people don't have to learn any skills or develop their talents because they overly rely upon their looks to get what they want. It doesn't necessarily help to justify coming into existence, and it certainly doesn't make someone a good person. It just amazes me how complacent and accepting people can be of the horror that comes with procreation. Unable to accept the solution of extinction, they end up worshipping suffering. Maybe he didn't like the fact that I was rejecting the lifestyle he chose that led directly to this tragedy. My wife was the only one I saw shedding a tear at this event, and she didn't even know him. I experienced my grief while I was drawing this portrait, so I was able to stay composed at the memorial. Looking at photos and mementos from a life can be a very emotional experience, yet almost everyone had dry eyes. I wonder if Joe's parents really realized that they set him and themselves up for the fall purposely. But not only that, I became friends with their creation, and now I have to suffer this loss as well. So does everyone who knew him, like his co-workers, and all of the people who witnessed his death. He was a custodian at the hospital where his father, myself, and even my brother for a short time all used to work. As Mendham always says, being a janitor is a noble profession. Other people make messes, someone has to clean them up. I had always hoped that Joe would make something more of himself, but he seemed comfortable enough where he was. Not everyone is as unsatisfied with their life as I am. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there and move on. For a meat eater, he was a decent man. He never asked me for anything, and he was always pleasant to be around. He had a really infectious smile, so I definitely had to work that into my drawing, and he really cared about his dog, so I had to put him in there as well. We spent a great deal of time together when we were young, and I have really fond memories of sharing my love of comic books and drawing with him and his brother. This has not been a very good summer for me, and my thoughts have been especially black. My wife and I both had medical problems. I can still barely walk around because of my surgery. My mom fell and ended up in the hospital. My old next-door neighbor died in May, but at least I did get to talk to him before he died, because he ended up in the same facility where my mom lives. His funeral was at my old Catholic church, so I decided not to go to that one. I think my brother's service will be the final time I set foot in that place. At least I hope so. I've also been moonlighting on an assignment from hell since August. It's prevented me from making YouTube videos or having much free time. I like the extra money, but I wonder if the added stress is worth it. But I didn't really want to make this video about me. Then again, I didn't plan on making this video at all. We often react selfishly to sudden death. We think, wow, that could have been me dying in front of a bunch of strangers in the middle of the street. This is the intersection where a senior citizen plowed into his bike. My wife and I drive it regularly, so now every time we visit this part of town, we will think of Joe and why we will never have children. Stay safe, everyone, and thanks for watching.